going to co-host with Wendy Lynch. I want to go ahead and let everyone know that we will be recording this session. If you prefer to remain anonymous, please keep your video off and change your name on the screen. Otherwise, we will go ahead and get started. So I think the recording has already started. Maybe Wendy punched that button for me. Thank you, ma'am. And I will introduce today's presenters, Luann Duncan from Sumter County and Sarah Murphy from Seminole County. So I'm going to mute myself and let you ladies take it away.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. We're glad that you're here and we're on to bone builders and bandits. So we are still on the step of proper nutrition and we'll be continuing that here today. And some of you may be wondering about bandits, but I think you might know. Who can put in the chat or help me read the chat or tell me what are the 4 nutrients of public health concern that we've talked about? Anybody have something there? I'm going to get you back on to focus here. What are the kinds of things that we need to think about? Do you remember? Somebody want to read the chat to me?
So far, calcium has come up.
Okay. Anything else?
Vitamin D.
There you go. There's 2 of the 4.
Magnesium, potassium.
Okay. Those are the
sunshine.
Ones that, what was that?
Sunshine.
Sunshine for that vitamin D. Great. Okay.
Salt. Had lots of things dropped in here.
Okay.
Protein. So phosphorus.
Okay. All right, so let's look at the 4 nutrients that are public health concern. Our focus there is really on the potassium, the fiber, calcium, and vitamin D. Okay, those are the public health concerns. But now calcium and vitamin D are the key nutrients related to the bone health that we've been talking about. Now, those of you that name the other things like vitamin K, phosphorus, magnesium, those are things that we believe to impact our bones and to help strengthen them, but we really don't have enough research on those yet. And we also know that too much inorganic phosphorus like that in cola is not good for our bones. We're going to jump that's a slide that we're going to be talking about a little bit more here in a few minutes. So, oops, I was supposed to ask you, what is the symbol of healthy eating pattern from the USDA? And that's the My Plate. I answered it for you. I'm sorry I didn't give you a chance to tell me. So look at these in this list. I kind of already cheated and told you a little bit about it. But when we talk about bone bandits, basically what we're talking about are they things that might interfere with us keeping our bone strength. And so of those, what are these things listed here? The soft drinks, caffeine, salt, sodium, fiber, oxalates, protein, do you believe might harm our bones? Have you heard anything about these things? The soft drinks, yeah, I kind of told you a little bit. Oxalates, we've talked about those in the last couple of weeks. Okay, too much caffeine, salt. Okay, let's get down to business. We're going to go through these and see what we have related to the research. So when we look at soda, and drinking too much soda has 2 specific ways that it could cause a problem here. One of them is the fact that we displace our healthy beverages, meaning instead of drinking something that might have more calcium in it, more nutrients that we need, and less sugar, we're drinking the soda. And then we might not be getting our minimum requirements. But the other thing is that colas do have inorganic phosphates in them. So what does that mean? Basically, it's just an added mineral phosphorus that's added to the cola. And you think, well, phosphorus is good, but it's an organic form, and therefore it can interfere. So you already had that right. And then what happens then is we release calcium, and then it's called bone resorption, where we lose that calcium from our bones to provide the calcium that our body needs. So that is another issue there with it. Now, some of those colas also have caffeine, so we're going to be talking about that as well. The bottom line, though, when it comes to the colas, is that the colas are the ones, only the colas that have that added phosphorus to them. However, once again, we think of it as being something maybe you only drink once in a while, because if you drink it on a regular basis, you might not be getting the things that you need for a healthy diet. So now into the coffee. I have to admit, I have my coffee every morning. It's a habit, and we're 26th in the world as a country for coffee consumption. Finland, I guess, wins the prize with 33 pounds per person per year. So I had to go in and ask myself how much coffee we drink. And I figured that my husband and I probably go through 26 pounds a year of coffee. So that's about 13 pounds per person. And we usually average 1 to 2 cups depending. And that I thought was doing pretty good, to keep it down that low. But recent research is showing us that drinking coffee is associated with an increased fracture risk for women, but it didn't show up for men. So we don't really have all of the whys and wherefores here, but we do think it has something to do with the caffeine. Now, tea, on the other hand, has a variety of different outcomes. The black tea and the green teas are all from the same plant, and herbal teas all come from different kinds of plants. Some of them are fermented, some of them are not, and we're not really sure if that makes a really big difference. And they all, though, the black, the green, the oolong, and the white teas all have caffeine in them. Unless, of course, they've been decaffeinated. So there is an association between tea consumption and bone mineral density, but it's really not sure what the outcome is on fractures. But really, we're seeing that tea can be a bone builder. And so we're not sure about that because of the caffeine related point. But at the same time, some of these teas might just help you do a little better, because we're not seeing the fracture problems and the osteoporosis problems related to tea. So the bottom line is that there is limited evidence about the caffeine and how that impacts us. And one of the things that Marie helped me look up here is that I asked, what about coffee if we add milk to it? Because is it okay to go on?
I just restarted it. I have no idea why it stopped, but okay.
Okay, great. So anyway, Marie looked up at the AmericanBoneHealth.org and found that for a cup of caffeine beverage, 1 cup, probably we lose about 4 milligrams of the calcium. So if you use 1 to 2 tablespoons of milk in your coffee, it will counteract that. So that's our current research and what we know about that. So just remember that drinking too much of these other beverages may replace drinking the good, healthy things that we need, and that some of the characteristics of those might interfere with our absorption of the calcium and also lead to fractures.
All right, so let's move on to salt, and also known as sodium. So there was a study in Korean women, and it was postmenopausal women in Korea, and they found that when the urinary sodium, so they measured the sodium that was excreted in people's urine, when they found that that was high, there was also an increase in calcium excretion. So they thought maybe high intakes of sodium was leading to more calcium excretion. And they also found that in these people with high sodium excretion, there was also higher serum bone turnover markers. And so that was suggesting that there was some kind of relationship between sodium and sodium intake and burn turnover rates, but that was in postmenopausal Korean women, so is less generalizable to our demographics and our population. Alternatively, in the Women's Health Initiative study, they found no relationship between sodium and changes in bone mineral density or fracture risk. And then in fact, they also found that higher sodium intakes were associated with higher total bone mineral density. But it's really important to remember that we should be trying to stay within the current recommendation for sodium, because many of us know that higher levels of sodium in our diet can increase our hypertension risk. So we want to keep those below 2,300 milligrams per day to reduce our hypertension risk. And then also we can limit our intake of processed foods. We want to check our food labels and check and see if the sodium on that food label is less than 20% of our daily value. And like I just said, so we're not quite sure about sodium, but it doesn't look like there is a relationship between sodium intake and osteoporosis. And so sodium intake in postmenopausal women within the current guidelines, so below that 2,300 milligrams, is unlikely to significantly affect osteoporosis. And we can, for overall health and especially heart health, we can limit these canned and processed foods, which have added sodium to them, to extend the shelf life, and try to eat more fresh foods. All right, so now we have a little activity on sodium, just to get everyone thinking about where sodium comes into our diet. And so on the next slide, we'll have a menu up, and hopefully everybody can see this. And in the chat, you can just put some changes. This is a daily menu, and you can see at the top, it says the total sodium of this day's worth of eating is 6,207 milligrams of sodium, which is much higher than the recommended amount. So you could put in the chat some changes that you think would help to reduce the sodium in this diet. And it could be anything listed from breakfast to the evening snack.
Okay, so I have one suggestion in the chat box. Have yogurt instead of cottage cheese, unsalted peanuts, probably the reduced sodium ham on your sandwich for lunch, chicken instead of ham, fresh beans instead of canned. So Sarah, can we rinse those beans? If they're canned beans, would that help?
Yep, definitely. So if they're canned green beans and they're not reduced sodium green beans, you can rinse them. That will get rid of some of the sodium, but probably not all of it.
Delete the pickles. Get rid of the processed meats. Yuck, American cheese. No pickles, no cheese. Sauce. Oh, we must have cheese sauce on something. Oh, the broccoli.
The broccoli.
Yeah. Get rid of ditch the jarred sauce, make your own. Ooh, yum. I will be eating at Miss Betty's house. She make her own. So Miss Pat says, how about jar spaghetti sauce?
Yep. So when we're thinking about the jarred spaghetti sauce, we'd want to try to buy the low sodium options, or like Betty said, you can make your own at home. These are also awesome suggestions. Another one that I don't think that has been said is taking a look at this Italian style turkey sausage. So sausage is always going to be a little bit higher in sodium. It's a more processed meat. And so instead of using the turkey sausage, you could use ground turkey to cut back there. You can season your broccoli. We said this about the cheese sauce, like ditching the cheese sauce, but we still don't want to have boring broccoli. So you can instead season it with garlic powder or fresh lemon.
Okay, Miss Pat said she always makes her own sauce. Miss Sandra says I eat my broccoli plain.
Okay,
Another
broccoli
suggestion
lover.
to get rid of the olives, because olives are usually really high in sodium. Substitute salad dressing with oil and vinegar. Okay, that's a good idea.
Yep.
Instead of, they said roast the broccoli and delete croutons. Croutons are usually pretty salty too.
Yep, especially if you're getting the ones that are seasoned already. So that would be another option. Or just checking the back of your bag and being mindful of how much you're using as well. If you're only using two or three croutons on your salad, maybe it's worth keeping them in for a little extra crunch, but you could always try, something else for crunch, like nuts. All right, so these are awesome. I think we got them all. We can move ahead to the next slide. All right, let me just move my little window. So for fiber, I'm curious, what are some favorite foods that people have that contain fiber? You can put those in the chat. We've already said one, broccoli.
Okay, we've got some oatmeal, some lentils, sweet potatoes, plums, prunes, whole grain cereals, oranges,
Wow. Awesome.
pears, lettuce, apples.
Awesome. So we have a fiber loving group. I love that. So fiber is important, especially insoluble fiber from whole grains. This acts as a bulking agent in the gut and helps us reduce constipation. High fiber diets are associated with reduced risk of heart disease, diabetes, some types of cancer. So it's really important in our diets. And when we think about fermentable fibers, especially prebiotic fibers, these can actually help absorb calcium in our gut. So
A question in the chat: what is an example of a fermentable fibers?
yep, these are gonna be some. I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head.
Would be like sauerkraut, maybe pickles, some of the different vegetables that have been fermented.
Yeah.
So on a quick search, yeah, that's kind of the same thing they were going to. Our beans and the best whole food sources of fermentable fibers are beans and legumes.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about those in the next slide, actually. So phytates are found in some high fiber foods, and these actually interfere with calcium absorption in the gut. And so phytates are found in legumes and wheat bran, and they prevent some of that calcium absorption. And this becomes less of an issue whenever, like in the United States, this is more of an issue where people in developing countries are eating a lot of legumes or wheat products and not having higher intakes of calcium or other minerals. And so for people in the United States, we'll worry about phytates a little bit less. However, in contrast, many dietary fibers, particularly the prebiotic fibers, are fermented by bacteria in the colon to form short chain fatty acids, which increase the absorption of minerals such as calcium. So it looks like we've got some stuff going on in the chat. Let's see.
So there is a EDIS document that addresses probiotics that Wendy Lynch dropped into our chat box. I would encourage you guys to just click on that and download it. It has a lot of really good information on the prebiotics. Then we have another question. There's also one for prebiotics because there is a difference between pro and pre. Also, so I'm confused. We are encouraged to eat beans, like black beans, at least 3 times per week. So will that interfere with calcium absorption?
So when we think about our overall diet, we want to think of it as like a whole. And if you're eating only black beans and you're just getting enough calcium in your diet, then there could be, you might not be getting the recommended amount. And we'll talk about oxalates as well, which we'll talk about those in a couple of slides that also decrease the bioavailability of calcium. But if the benefits of black beans are way higher than the amount that they're actually interfering. So it is something to keep in mind that if you're really concerned about calcium or you think you're not getting enough, then that could be something that you consider. But the benefits of black beans and having those fibers from the black beans is, I would say, a bigger benefit than the decreased calcium absorption.
An easy way to think about this is a probiotic is like a live microorganism that's going to help maintain or improve our good bacteria or that microflora in our bodies. But a prebiotic is like the high fiber foods that act as a food for that human microflora stuff. So the prebiotics help maintain the probiotics, if that makes sense.
Thank you. All right. So the bottom line is that some sources of fiber do contain phytates, which bind to calcium. And this tends to not be an issue with adequate calcium intakes, and particularly in westernized diets. And so diets rich in whole grains, legumes, fruits, and vegetables are definitely recommended because they have, like I said, so many health benefits. And like we hit that, like what we said up top, which is that fiber is one of the underconsumed nutrients of public health concern. So we definitely don't want to be limiting our fiber. We want to make sure that we're getting enough of that in our diet, as well as calcium. All right, now oxalates are another thing that bind to calcium in the gut. And so these are naturally occurring in a variety of foods. The ones that come to mind are like spinach and beet greens. And these bind to calcium in the gut and form a calcium oxalate. And then we are unable to absorb the calcium from that calcium oxalate. And so when we eat foods high in oxalates, some of the calcium or most of it is not absorbed. And this is where it becomes, we say that calcium in these foods is not bioavailable. And a good example of this is spinach. And so I believe we talked about it in one of the previous classes. So spinach, whenever you look up the nutrient content of spinach, is high in calcium, but it's not a great source of calcium because our body can't actually absorb all of that calcium that's there. And I was reading one of my textbooks to prepare for this class that I had on nutrition, and it said to get 1 cup of milk, the same amount of calcium from 1 cup of milk, you would have to eat 8 cups of spinach. And I don't know about you all, but I don't think I want to eat 8 cups of spinach. I'd rather drink a glass of milk. That's just so much chewing. And so the other thing about calcium oxalates is that they also can form kidney stones, and people who might be getting a lot of kidney stones may be told to avoid these oxalate high foods. And like I said, these are found in spinach, beet leaves, rhubarb, cocoa powder, wheat germ, almonds, and some other foods. And I see a lot of these foods added to smoothies. So that could be something to keep in mind if you're making smoothies at home and you are adding these to your smoothies with milk, that maybe you want to add in different greens, or instead of almond butter, use peanut butter, to try to increase that calcium absorption. All right. I think we're ready for the next slide.
What about almond milk?
So I would think that almond milk tends to be fortified with calcium, and it's usually fortified, well, not all, but some that are fortified at a higher rate. So instead of having like the typical about 300 milligrams per cup, I feel like I recently looked at an almond milk that had like 450 milligrams of calcium. And so I don't know if the milking process decreases the amount of oxalates. I'm not quite sure. But I would think that since it's mostly, I would think that it would to some degree. All right. So the bottom line with oxalates is that they're found in a lot of healthful foods, which don't need to be avoided. When we're choosing these foods, we just need to ensure that we're getting our calcium from other sources. And also just making sure that we're, having enough calcium elsewhere in our diet and not counting these, which if we look at the nutrition facts could look like they have got a good amount of calcium in them, like spinach, that we're not counting these as sources of calcium. And cooking or soaking vegetables does decrease the oxalate content very slightly. And so, and I know like processing foods as well, I did read that, that it does change the oxalate content a little bit. So, all right. So now we have a little word find, and hopefully we can get this to work correctly. At the top of your screen, you should see some options, potentially. Maybe one that says annotate. Let me know if people can see that.
Sarah, where would that be found?
So when I was looking before, I don't see it on mine. So maybe we'll skip this one. We weren't in the webinar form before, so, but we have this this oxalate word find for you, and you can take some time. Word finds are a great way to get your brain going and see if you can find the oxalates on your own, and we'll include that in the items that you're sent afterwards. All right.
Thanks, Sarah. It works good in practice. So I don't know if you could see that I was highlighting spinach there in the very center, but you should have access to that and be able to use it. So now we're into protein. And so the problem is that protein is really good for us. As we well know, it's used as a framework for our bones and our muscles. We learned that as children, right? To build strong muscles, you need your protein, but it also is beneficial for our skin, for our digestion, for fighting off infections. And so we do know that it's something that we need. So there have been studies showing that there was increased urinary loss due to acid production. And so like if protein does encourage acid production within the body. And so with that acid production, we could lose some of the calcium. One of the studies, however, showed that a group of women, and they gave them higher protein diets and lower protein diets. And in that particular study, what happened was there was more absorption or digestion of the calcium. So there was more calcium being digested and absorbed, and therefore more released in the urine. So we're really not 100% sure what's going on. We always say that. Nobody's ever 100% sure, it seems. But at the same time, we really do believe that the protein still is a bone builder and something that we need in our diets. Okay. So it is important for us to get enough protein for healthy bones. And the issue here is that many older adults do not meet those protein needs for a lot of different reasons. So the thing is try to make sure that we do get adequate protein from a variety of sources. It does not always have to be from a meat or animal sources. There are a lot of good sources for protein. And if you need help with finding some of those or want to explore that further, let us know and we'd be glad to help you out. But the question is how much do we actually need a day? And I believe that you're going to have access to this, in your materials. But if you have your phones, can you get them out? And if you're not watching this on the phone, maybe you can still do it, but try to find your calculator. Or if you're old fashioned like me and still like to do math on pencil and paper, take your current body weight and you divide it by 2.2. That's how we come up with the number of kilograms. So your weight in kilograms is your weight divided by 2.2. And then you multiply that times 0.8 to get the daily recommended amount of protein for you personally. So we've got a sample here. We just randomly selected 150 pounds and you divide that by 2.2, which comes up to 68.18 forever kilograms. So then you take that 68.18 and multiply it times 0.8, and you come up with 54 that you need of protein every day. So the number of grams here is listed some examples of the chicken breast is 32 grams for 3.5 ounces, which is probably about the amount of the size of your palm. And black beans for a cup is 14 grams. So you can see that it isn't going to take that long really to get the amount of protein you need. So then there's also the acid ash diet, or known as the alkaline diet. Raise your hand if you can. Can you find the response button and raise your hand if you've heard of the alkaline diet? And somebody can tell me how many people are raising their hand, because I don't think I can see that.
Not too many so far.
Okay, so I heard of it. It's been probably 7, 8 years ago. I was hearing a lot about it, where people were drinking alkaline water and buying alkaline water. And so if you heard of that, that was probably how this was added in. And so basically, that protein that we talked about, increasing on the acid in our diet. And so therefore we have people thinking that if we eat the alkaline foods, then we're not going to have so much of an issue. But our body naturally buffers the amount of acid. Remember, we have a lot of stomach acid in our bodies, and our bodies should be able, typically, normally be able to take care of that. So the thing is that the thought is if we have that high acid diet, that we could, make an alkaline diet, and then we're not going to lose all of that calcium and other nutrients from our body that we need. And really, research doesn't support that adverse effect of those acid forming diets. And so we don't really promote it per se. But the thing is, the bottom line is the alkaline diet is very, very comparable to the dietary guidelines for Americans that we promote through Extension, the DASH diet, My Plate that we've been showing you. So it emphasizes that a lot of fruits and vegetables, lean meats, and limiting alcohol, sugar, and processed foods, just like we recommend to everybody for the most part anyway. There are some variations on the alkaline diet that we want to pay attention to. So the paleo diet is one of them, and it completely eliminates dairy, grains, and your legumes. And we know that that might not be a good thing. Anytime we take a food group out of our diet, we can start to lose some very important nutrients our body needs. But if you're just following the other kinds of things, you're probably doing something very similar to the alkaline diet. So I think we're back to you, aren't we not, Sarah?
Yep. So just to review what we've kind of gone over, the bandits that we've talked about are the soft drinks, the phytates, the oxalates, maybe coffee. So the soft drinks, you know, are undesirable for optimal nutrition because they may displace those nutritious beverages like milk. And they also have that inorganic phosphorus, which can harm bones, some of them. And so that is why that's a bone bandit. The phytates and the oxalates are both bone bandits, but we have to then consider, you know, what are the benefits of those foods that are high in those phytates and oxalates. So the health benefits of a diet rich in fiber really do outweigh the reduced calcium absorption from legumes, for example, like we talked about with the phytates. And so we just want to be making sure that we're meeting both our needs for daily fiber and daily calcium. And then for coffee, you know, we're not quite sure yet. More research is needed. And for builders, we see tea, and again, you know, we need some more research, but there's a lot of benefits, documented benefits to tea. And then protein is definitely considered a bone builder overall, and prebiotics, which Wendy dropped a link to more information about those prebiotics in the chat. So, all right. So just in summary, we want to make sure that our diet is a variety, and sometimes it'll be bone bandits like the phytates and the oxalates, but we want to make sure that we're getting those bone builders as well. And with anything in our diets, we want to be making sure that we are getting that variety, having a nice mixture. And when we're thinking about our diets overall, we want to be trying to reach those dietary guidelines and following the MyPlate guide for eating. And this will ensure that, you know, our overall health will be supreme. And with caffeine, particularly from coffee, we want to drink that in moderation. I don't know about y'all, but if I drink too much coffee, I get so jittery. So you can always try to be mindful of that as well.
Okay, so I do have a few things here in the chat. So alkaline water, Smart Water has a brand evidently that Julie saw a commercial for, and then the machines at home. But Janetta brought up soy milk because soy was one of the foods listed with oxalates. So is it just soybeans like edamame? My screen rolled. Hold on. That have the oxalates? Any insight on the soy milk?
I can't say that I'm positive about soy milk. I would think that because soy milk is such a good alternative to cow's milk, it's got the highest amount of protein. I would think that they have removed as much as possible because it is used by so many who are lactose intolerant or choose not to drink cow's milk. So I would think that the calcium in soy milk is probably bioavailable and easily absorbed, would be my inkling.
Okay.
If anybody else has an opinion, feel free to
Yes,
speak
if
up.
yep, you're absolutely right. We dropped it in the chat earlier,
Okay.
so it was answered there as well, but right on the
Thanks.
money.
Thanks, Wendy.
Also, it was asked, hemp milk has lots of protein. Would it have oxalates?
I don't know. We can
I
look
didn't know
that
that was a
up,
thing,
though.
but I'm not
Hemp milk.
surprised.
It's one of the newer milk alternatives. It is one of the pricier ones as well. I know that. But I don't know if it has oxalates in it.
Okay.
I don't think it's considered a legume, so maybe that's a hint. But we could probably look that up and get that information to you.
Just a random Google said that just hemp itself has 3 milligrams of oxalate per 2 tablespoons. And that was an analysis, I guess, of hemp seeds. And this was the kidneydietitian.org that provided that information. So the USDA, Wendy Lynch put a great tool in your chat box that you can use to look at numerous things. You can put in a search and it'll bring up the nutrients and it'll give you the portion sizes, and you can adjust that to suit what you're looking for. Did I miss any other questions in there? I know a lot of things got answered in the chat. Wendy was working on that.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Dr. Dahl.
So I would encourage you to run back through the chat and download any sheets that you didn't get the opportunity to before. I'm going to let you move on to your simple stretches.
All right. So our stretches today, the first one is a neck stretch. So if everybody wants to do it with me, you just sit up really tall, or you can stand up really tall, and you move your neck from left to right. So turn your head to the right or left for a few seconds. We can hold for 15. And then turn your head to the other side and hold. And it's important with these neck stretches that nothing should feel like it's being pinched or pulled. And especially with your head, you don't want to be pulling it really sharply or, moving it in ways that it doesn't feel good for you. All right, we can also just give our shoulders a little relaxing. The next one is an ankle stretch. So to do this, I can, let me take off my background. All right. And to do this, you can sit at the tip of your chair and hold on. Make sure that you are holding the sides for stability, especially if you're in a rolling chair like me. And then you just want to put your foot out in front, flex your toes, and then you can point them as well. You can repeat that a few times and do it with the other leg. It's a nice stretch. And stretching every, if you're sitting at a desk like me, stretching every, 25-30 minutes can really help with blood flow and productivity. All right, and then the final one is a chest stretch. So just putting your arms out straight, sitting up straight, lifting your arms at your shoulder to shoulder height, and then palms facing forward. Try not to twist your arms like that. Just keep them flat. And just squeezing your shoulder blades together so you feel a nice stretch in your chest. The other thing you can do is kind of cactus. I've seen a lot of people cactus their arms if this is uncomfortable for you, holding them out straight. All right, and then you can just repeat that 3 to 5 times. All right. And finally, we can set some goals for the week. So if you are going along with us, think about, some goals you could set in your life this week related to this week's topic of bone builders and bandits, and think about how what we've discussed today, may impact your overall bone health. Maybe your goal this week is to increase one of the bone builders. And I think that is it. If we have any other questions, Luann and I are here.
Thank you, ladies. You were very well prepared and answered some very hard questions. Are there any further questions? Anything anyone would like to discuss or share?